So, in India, a brand new set of rules for universities was supposed to be this huge step forward for equity. But instead, it just blew up. It sparked a massive nationwide firestorm. Today, we're going to dig into exactly why that happened. And just recently, things got even more complicated. India's highest court stepped in and basically hit the pause button on the whole thing. They froze a policy that, honestly, had already sent massive shockwaves across the entire country. Which, of course, brings up the big questions, right? What are these rules, really? And how on earth did they become so controversial? Well, let's get into it. Okay, so to really get a handle on where things stand right now, we've got to start with the moment this whole thing just stopped in its tracks. It was January 29th, 2026. The Supreme Court of India basically froze the implementation of these new equity regulations. They pointed to some flaws, and just like that, the whole policy was thrown into legal limbo. The practical effect? The nationwide rollout screeched to a halt, and universities were told, hey, for now, you got to go back to the old 2012 rules. So, okay, before we get into the controversy, we really have to understand what these 2026 rules were trying to do in the first place. What was the goal here? At the heart of everything is this one word: equity. And it's super important to get what they mean by this. It's not just about equality, giving everyone the exact same thing. The regulations define it as creating a truly level playing field for everybody. It's about opportunity, making sure everyone has a fair shot at success. And the goals they set out were, well, they were ambitious, to say the least. We're talking about eradicating discrimination based on pretty much everything: religion, race, caste, gender, you name it. It was about protecting students from historically disadvantaged groups. And here's the picker. The whole thing was meant to bring universities in line with India's big national education policy of 2020, which basically mandates full equity and inclusion as a cornerstone of education. All right, so those are the big ideas, but how are they actually planning to make this happen, turn these principles into real action on campus? The plan was this really interesting four-part system. The idea was to be proactive, not just wait for problems to happen. So you got the central hub, the Equal Opportunity Center. But then, and this is the really novel part, they wanted to have people on the ground. Think mobile equity squads and equity ambassadors in every single department. And on top of that, a 24/7 helpline for immediate support, plus a super strict process for getting complaints resolved quickly. And that last part, the timely justice piece, was a really big deal. Just look at this timeline. A complaint gets filed, and within 24 hours, the committee has to meet. They've got 15 working days to investigate and report back. Then the head of the institution has just 7 days to act. This whole thing was designed to stop complaints from getting buried in paperwork or just ignored, which, let's be honest, is a huge problem. It created a clear, accountable path from start to finish. And believe me, this policy wasn't just a suggestion. It had some serious teeth. When we talk about penalties for not complying, we're not talking about a slap on the wrist. I mean, look at this. A university could be cut off from UGC funding. They could be barred from offering degree programs altogether, even online ones. And the ultimate penalty? Getting removed from the official list of recognized universities. It was basically an existential threat. Comply, or you might cease to exist as an institution. So you look at all this, right? It seems comprehensive, it seems well-intentioned. So how did it all go so wrong? How did this seemingly straightforward administrative policy just explode into a massive political firestorm? Well, what happened is that almost overnight, two completely opposite stories about these rules took hold. On one hand, you had people celebrating it as this huge, necessary push for inclusion and social justice. But on the other hand, a huge political backlash erupted. Critics started saying the rules were alienating the ruling party's own core voters from the general category. And opponents had some data they could point to. They took a look at the numbers. Out of 40 million students in the country, there were 378 official discrimination complaints. Their argument was, look, is discrimination a problem for those 378 people? Absolutely. But does that number justify such a sweeping, massive overhaul of the entire system? And that argument, it really hit home for a lot of people. This created a perception that just fueled the protests. It led to this growing belief among certain groups that the government didn't care about their interests anymore, that it was prioritizing a different agenda. As one person put it, it created a deep mistrust between the government and its own core supporters. So that brings us back to where we started. The regulations are frozen by the Supreme Court, and everything is just up in the air. The whole initiative is basically at a crossroads. It's stuck in this massive tug of war. You've got the courts looking at its legal flaws, the government stuck in a huge political bind, and all of this is happening on top of these really deep divisions in society about what the policy was even for. When you boil it all down, it's a high-stakes balancing act. On one side, you have the push for reform, the goal of achieving real social justice. But on the other side, you have political reality, the need to keep your core supporters happy. It's a classic case of what's right versus what's politically possible, and the risks on both sides are huge. So, with the policy stuck in limbo, it leaves us with this really big fundamental question. The courts, they'll figure out the legal side of these specific rules. But the bigger tension here, how does a nation actually balance the noble pursuit of radical equity with cold, hard political reality? That question isn't going away. And it's a challenge that goes way, way beyond the walls of any university.